All right, folks, as the implosion of the Ron DeSantis campaign continues, it seems to be accelerating. It's moving into overdrive. He's now in single digits. He's almost losing. I think he's tied with Chris Christie now in New Hampshire. Nikki Haley is biting at his heels in South Carolina. She'll probably overtake him. And so overall, things not going well. And so what lessons should we draw from this? Well, maybe it's too soon to really come to any conclusions, but I've already been hearing a narrative that is picking up steam. I first heard it with very mainstream media journo voices, and now I'm hearing it echoed amongst Trump world, which I talked about yesterday. And this is, I'm not going to spend today slamming Trump world. I'm trying to be pretty balanced in how I slam people. I want to go after everyone. I kind of focus less on Democrats because I think if you're watching this channel, you probably understand the problems with Democrats. It's kind of like with Jimmy Dore. You watch Jimmy Dore's show. Does he spend most of his time just talking about why Republicans are so bad? No, because his audience already doesn't like Republicans. They know what's wrong with Republicans. And so he spends his time talking about what's wrong with Democrats. And so I do the same thing from the right. Not that I want to compare myself to Jimmy Dore. Obviously, he's funny, and I just mumble into a can. But back to the very failed Ron DeSantis campaign. The narrative that was started in the mainstream media and is now being amplified by Trump world is that DeSantis is losing because he's too far right. He's just too extreme for the Republican primary voter. He plays too much to the base, and the base doesn't like that. Specifically, he's way too pro-life and even too pro-gun. It makes people uncomfortable. Republican primary voters, they don't like pro-life candidates, and we know they don't like guns. That's just not something that Republican primary voters are interested in. And so if you want to win, you got to run against that. And so DeSantis shot himself in the foot by signing constitutional carry and by signing a heartbeat bill in Florida. Now keep in mind, DeSantis is trying to run against the guy who got Roe v. Wade overturned. Trump is responsible for getting rid of Roe v. Wade. Every Republican candidate promised to do that for 50 years. Only Trump achieved that. You would think that Trump would own the pro-life lane in the Republican primary, but apparently not. From what I hear from most Trump backers, as well as Trump himself, he's very much trying to distance himself from the pro-life issue. And I mean, this is what I hear also from people who I have, deep analytical respect for. Like yesterday, I mentioned Barnes and Barris. They do a multi-hour show every once in a while, and I always try and sit down and listen to the whole thing because I do think that those two have a lot of interesting thoughts, and I respect their analysis. But both of them are on this page too, which again, this is something that I first heard like with the those of you who maybe are familiar with local Tampa radio, Ryan Gorman, who is a total mainstream media hack. He has taken over the morning time slot on the biggest talk radio station in this part of the state, although I would imagine that their market share has been declining over the years now that they no longer have their longtime popular morning hosts, as well as the death of Rush Limbaugh. I think that both of those two things has taken a big toll probably on that station. But anyway, they run a conga line show that has on mainstream media journos from 6 to 9 a.m. every morning. And occasionally, I will tune in for a few minutes. I can't take much of it because it is like listening to CNN, which is just boring. It's not that I disagree with you. It's that it's mind numbing. And I heard this point long before I heard it coming out of Trump world from this show and then other sources like it, the News Nation crowd, for example. And I don't give News Nation as a network a lot of crap, because they're trying to be like what people imagined CNN was like 15 years ago, before people really hated CNN. That's what News Nation, the ideal that they're trying to strive for. And I guess I have some, I don't know if I would say respect, but sympathy. And so we hear this line: DeSantis is just too far right. People are scared of the abortion issue. And what they're saying is that I and everyone I know, we don't like guns, we don't like restrictions on abortion, and so therefore this is what the voter cares about. And I dismiss this when it comes from journos, because journos live in a bubble, and yes, everyone that they know really does not like guns, and really does like abortion. But when it comes to pro-Trump pundits that I have a lot of respect for, it does make me really scratch my head when they echo these same points. When they say that, again, I'm struggling here. The guy who overturned Roe v. Wade, he has a nuanced view of abortion. DeSantis, who signed a heartbeat bill, which I think is pretty easy to defend, it's a pretty minimal thing to ask. I mean, you can still have abortions in Florida. Florida did not get rid of abortion. And why didn't that happen? Probably because it wasn't politically feasible. You know what was politically feasible? Hey, you know, if that kid that you're going to scramble in your belly, if their heart's beating, you know, like a living person, maybe then you don't kill it. I don't think that's too much to ask. But anyway, what we're told is that, well, sure, Trump appointed justices that overturned Roe v. Wade, but he still thinks that Planned Parenthood does a lot of good work. What? Why are we supposed to say that Planned Parenthood does a lot of good work? I don't care if the SS operates a food kitchen once a week for needy people in the slums of Amsterdam. The SS was still an occupying army that was hunting down and killing Jews and any dissidents against the Nazi regime. Even if they might do something that is defensible, part of their week, they're not good people. They're still evil. Planned Parenthood, you know, okay, sure, they might refer someone and say, hey, you should probably go get a mammogram. Here's a doctor I know that does mammograms. Tell them I sent you. Okay, is that in and of itself a bad thing? No, it's pretty benign. Recommending to a woman that she get a mammogram. Fairly benign. I don't want to be too graphic here, but let's just say using certain implements to eviscerate a child inside the womb and then evacuate it from the woman's body and into a dumpster, that's not defensible. And if you're doing that thing, I don't care about anything else you're doing. You know, Kermit Gosnell, for some reason we're allowed to criticize him. We're allowed to call him evil. But the abortionists at Planned Parenthood, they're good people. They do some good work. Sure, they do abortions, but that's not all of who they are. They're more than, you know, if you're an abortionist, you know, you're a human being too. I don't get this. I would think that most of my audience, pretty pro-Trump. Is there any one of you? I know that I don't have a very big audience, but that's kind of nice because it's like we're talking amongst friends. Are there any of you who think Republicans need to be softer on Planned Parenthood? Maybe they shouldn't threaten to cut Planned Parenthood's public funding. Maybe they shouldn't, dehumanize abortionists. I know this has been a long rant, but I'm actually getting somewhere. What I'm getting at with all this is that, yes, DeSantis is failing miserably. But don't blame don't blame that on the good things that he's done. That's like saying that I can't even come up with a good analogy. I was going to try to create an analogy about Trump in 2020, but it's like, well, you can't really do that when things are with the R word, rigged. I can't really analogize anything about what happened to Trump in 2020 to what's happening to DeSantis now. There's no comparison. But let's say that the election was totally clean in 2020, and Joe Biden ended up president. Should the response then be, well, gee, obviously, Trump was just too good of a president. He should have just been worse. He should have built less feet of wall, less miles of wall. He should have been softer on whatever it was he was tough on, China. He should have been more aggressive in the Middle East. He should have gone to war in Syria and Ukraine at the same time. He shouldn't have tried to wind down the war in Afghanistan. Is that what we would have said if Trump had, lost in a clean election and everyone agreed, oh yeah, Trump failed miserably? There's no question here. There's no gray area. No, I don't think that would be people's reactions. So the fact that DeSantis is crashing and burning, why are we going to just say, oh, okay, well, obviously you just need to run to the left? This is like, I thought we learned this lesson after 2012. I remember listening to that, jerkwad Sean Hannity do the Republican post-mortem on Mitt Romney, and he said, well, see, Mitt Romney, he's just too tough on immigration. And by the way, Trump himself said the same thing, too, back in 2012. Yeah, Romney lost because he's too tough on immigration. We need to be more open to our migrant friends. Mitt Romney, too far right. No, you need a moderate. Remember when Mitt Romney was considered far right by Sean Hannity and Donald Trump? Did that really turn out well? How did that analysis age? Because really, if what we're supposed to believe is that Ron DeSantis went from being in the 30s to the single digits because he's pro-life and pro-gun, then what does that say about the Republican Party? It says Republicans suck. If that's the reason they rejected him. Now, I happen to think that they rejected him because they don't think he feels very authentic, which was my read on him back in 2018? No, 2016. Yeah, that was it. I met DeSantis at an event. It was 2016. And I purposefully asked him a question that I knew he would not know the answer to because it was a totally out of left field, basically a trick question. I mean, it had a correct answer, so it wasn't really a trick question. It was like nobody would ever be thinking about this. And so I just wanted to hear, how does he react when you ask him something and he has no idea what to say? And it wasn't well, or I should say it wasn't honest. He was able to spit out an answer, and he sounded like coherent, but the correct answer would have been from him, I haven't thought about that. Nobody's ever asked me that. Because I guarantee, it was like on the negative income tax or something, which was a concept from like 40 years ago that nobody talks about. And it's not a particularly pressing topic. It's not that interesting. It was just something random. And I thought, well, hey, how is this person going to respond if you ask him something? Can he admit, I don't know? Can he say those words? And he didn't. And he clearly didn't know. He clearly didn't have an answer prepared for that. No one would. But he didn't want to admit that. He was afraid. And so that, to me, always put a question mark next to him. And always said, how, this DeSantis guy, is he really who he says he is? And that read that I had on him from 7 years ago holds through to today. I'm still skeptical of him on a basic level because of that exchange. And so what's the big picture here? I know I'm all over the place. Something that I probably should have outlined. This would have been a good video, a good candidate for me to actually have something outlined, like points that I want to hit, so that I had some structure to what I was saying, rather than just, bopping around inside my head. People, for the most part, unless it's something that they're like very passionate about, marginal differences in policy positions do not govern how people feel about different candidates. What it comes down to is how they feel about that candidate. Do they trust him? Do they like him? Or her. I guess it could be a her. Hasn't happened yet, but, you know, it's possible. Anything's possible. Do they trust that person? Do they feel they're authentic? Do they think that they care about people like me? That's a big question. People, you know, that pollsters ask. Does X person care about people like me? That's what drives people to vote. It's not, you know, so it's not that Trump is, you know, he's just pro-choice enough to where he's able to appeal to people, and DeSantis, he's too pro-life. And, you know, Trump, he's much less strong on the Second Amendment, you know, because he said, take the guns first, due process later. The fact that, you know, they're saying, well, Trump is more popular, so obviously people don't like due process in the Second Amendment. It's like, no, if you sat someone down, if you took Republican primary voters and you asked them, hey, do you support red flag laws and no due process, or do you support constitutional carry? You know, I think pretty overwhelmingly you'd have, you know, at least 75% of Republicans would say, well, if I had to pick between the two, I'd go with constitutional carry. But obviously they're not picking DeSantis at that rate. So it's not about the policy. It's about who he is. And also who he's not. And ultimately, this was inevitable. But long before DeSantis signed the heartbeat bill or the constitutional carry bill, I said he could not beat Donald Trump. And that's because he is not going to outshine him, certainly not in a Republican primary. That's just the way it is. People either love Trump or they hate Trump. And most of the people who hate Trump are Democrats. Most of the people who love Trump are Republicans. So therefore, if you run Trump in a party where most of the people love him, they're not really going to consider other alternatives. They're not going to be that open-minded. They're going to go, oh, wait, Trump's running? Oh, well, of course I'm going to vote for Trump. You know, they might have voted for DeSantis under other circumstances. I think they probably would have. I think that most people agree with that. You know, and Trump supporters used to say that. You know, but now they say, oh my gosh, not only is DeSantis bad because he ran against Trump, he was actually never good, which is hilarious. Remember all those really, you know, right-wing things that DeSantis did? Those are actually bad now because DeSantis did them. I mean, it's remarkable how deranged I think a lot of Trump world has become over DeSantis, when he has never been a realistic threat to Trump's nomination. In fact, I've talked about him way more than I should have. I really should have just been mostly ignoring the guy, because he's not relevant. And he becomes less and less relevant as times go on. You know, it's kind of like watching the Rubio campaign. Remember Drudge's famous, fantastic front page, The Amazing Shrinking Campaign. And it was Rubio shrunk down like one of those NAFO dogs. But anyway, that's all in the past, much like DeSantis' chances of ever becoming president. And so with that said, I will not say I'm going to see you folks back here tomorrow. I'm still going to hold. We have to wait till Saturday. We have to wait a whole week. So, bye-bye.